Welcome to Content Disrupted, bold takes on brand marketing. I'm your host, Casey Noble, and together we'll explore what it takes to excel in brand marketing at one of the most exciting and disruptive times in industry history. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Content Disrupted, Bold Takes on Brand Marketing. Joining us today is Natalie Ades, the Vice President of Digital Marketing and Social Media for Marquee Health Services, which provides administrative and consulting services to skilled nursing facilities and senior housing communities throughout the Eastern Seaboard. She is a master of digital marketing and analytics, as well as a firm believer in paying it forward. So in addition to wearing the many hats that she does in her leadership role at Marquee, Natalie makes time to teach and consult other executives and senior leaders on how to build their own online presence. So we're really excited to have you on the show, Natalie. Welcome.
Hi, Casey. Welcome. Great to be here.
Awesome. So I would love, as we get started, if you could shed a little light on your own personal career journey. So what brought you into marketing and how you kind of got to Marquee and what you do in your current role there.
Absolutely. Happy to share. Without giving the very, very long story, but when I was a young girl, I always gravitated to communications and media. I can remember sitting in front of an RCA television screen, pen in hand, watching Connie Chung, who was my idol at the time, and wanting to be part of the media or journalism industry at that time. Fast forward into my high school and formative years in college, still that love of media as well as tech really started to dive in together and mesh. I was introduced to computers by my father, who really, my first computer that I was on was a Tandy 1000, going through the Ask Jeeves, the CompuServe, the AOL Got Mail era, all of those things that a lot of the marketers from 90s and early 2000s could easily relate to. As I went into college, went as a humanities major at Georgian Court University, really, really loved literature and really loved the ability to speak to the masses with what journalism and communications could do. I got my first opportunity at an internship at a company called Millspray, and my mentor, as well as the chief marketing officer there, was a woman by the name of Chantel Robinson, and really, really enjoyed having the ability to work under her. And she really was the one that fostered my understanding even further to what marketing could do.
That's awesome. So when we first spoke, I was really surprised, especially given that you are such like a digital savvy marketer, right? That I was surprised to hear that you're really known for spending a lot of time on the ground in Marquee's facilities, getting to know the people who work in those facilities, as well as like residents and even patients. And you're really passionate about being, what we kind of called a boots on the ground marketer. So can you describe for folks like what that has looked like and why it's been so critical to the work that you do?
Absolutely. Being a human to human marketer, as you said, I wear that on my heartstrings. In order for me to really feel that I could market a product, I need to know the people behind the product. And in order to do that, you need to dive deep and you need to be able to be out and about and not behind the computer screen always. So what that means to me is, I'm going on 8 years here at Marquee. And in my early years here was touring all of the centers that we service, rounding on the floors, getting to know the CNAs, interviewing them, asking them questions, really seeing the way they interacted with patients, understanding a little bit in their eyes and their shoes and what they do and the services they provide. Definitely more of a watcher and a listener than a speaker at that point, because I was learning all of the tools of the trade, coming from a different industry into senior care and long-term care. And then just continuing to be curious, and anything that I didn't know was certainly asking them on the scenes. So many hands have played into our digital marketing today.
So, can you share some specific examples of how that knowledge and those relationships that you built with that kind of approach, how those have benefited, your brand marketing and the way that you plan and lead the team?
So a couple of stories come to mind, and they'll be a little bit all over different areas or verticals of our communities. But let's start with, I remember at one community in particular in North Jersey, I had been interviewing a DON for just understanding why she chose healthcare, why she chose senior care in particular. She was at that community for well over 30 years. Um, and as she was speaking to the reasons why with her family and different personal things at that point in time, I could see a light bulb come to her mind as I was taking the interview. And the light bulb there, she started to get emotional. And this was in a private setting, and there were tears. And that evoked emotion sort of piqued my empathy and my compassion to, okay, somebody's expressing some type of vulnerability in this interview, but also how brave to express that to somebody that was just introduced to that individual just moments before. um, as we went on, I shared the story onto our social media channels, spotlighted her, and when that's what created a series still that runs to this day called Spotlight Saturday. That Spotlight Saturday is where we take the stories of what we on the digital team like to call our difference makers, and we really highlight what it is that their passion is within each of their communities and why they landed into this healthcare setting that they find themselves today to provide the very best care. That really has shaped our digital marketing from a all hands on deck, not a this is an us digital team and a they center level. It is everybody that is beautifully blended into our social media channels, and that's where I think we really stand apart from other brands. Everybody has a hand in our success here.
So do you find that even, on sort of the customer side, that sort of personal touch, that human level of communication has made a measurable difference in how people are engaging with your content?
Of course, absolutely. So there's never an idea that is too bold that digital will sit there and say, not now, or we can't further look into. I think our mindset on the team and the way that I try to teach the team and steer the team is always be curious. So a lot of salespeople might say always be closing. In marketing, I have adapted that to always be curious, and the curiosity is get us to clear, get us into why it's important, ask the hard questions, ask the challenging questions up front, so that if we're clear, we can communicate that messaging to who it is that we're trying to help along the way, whether it is through content on websites, whether it is through social media. So having that human to human touch. To give you another example, there was a time that I was at a community speaking, just standing around in the lobby waiting for a meeting to occur. And I noticed a family member sort of just like waiting for their loved one to be brought down and to sort of have some time. And I just started getting to talk to them. And I said, have you ever checked out our website? Have you ever? And as I started getting into that communication, they said, it would be really great if you had the activities calendar featured. This again was 7 years ago. Having the activities calendar put onto the Facebook page at that time, didn't realize that that was something that the consumer was looking for on that particular channel. So I started to get in the mindset of, okay, if this person's looking at the Facebook channel for this type of content, what other type of content is really what's important to them and why they're coming back to these pages. So again, with that questioning kind of approach of anytime I would find a family member or resident, like, what is it in it for you? What's going to keep getting you to come back? That's helpful and for that resident's family, it really was, they couldn't be at the community all day. They wanted to see the calendar so that they could help their loved ones select activities that they could participate in. And it was a convenient tool for them in order to communicate. So I think that's the way in which we really try to have our digital positioned as an informative source, whether for family, whether for residents, or even, professional partners have the information they need to make the decisions that they need to make.
I think that's such an important point to ultimately remember what the purpose of that digital experience is. And you got the direct feedback from the customer, something you never would have known. I want to put that for a second, because last time we spoke in the context of, sort of everything that's going on with digital marketing and, automation, and everybody's on the automation bandwagon, right? And we talked a little bit about the dangers of almost over reliance on automation. So I would love if you could share your thoughts on that and sort of how you look at what the right balance is between, that firsthand understanding of the customer, and then what, so many marketers are tempted to kind of like sit behind the desk and monitor and gather secondary or third party information about customers. What's the balance there between that, secondary understanding and data insights and the central view of the customer, and this like firsthand understanding?
Well, I think, and I appreciate the question. I think, when it comes to data driven marketing in the digital age, it's hard not to be at this point, right? In order for us to remain competitive. But the way that we need to have almost our own self checks, at least for myself, I feel it's so integral that if I feel like I'm behind the desk too often, I have a lot of colleagues in the sales side. That are also they are the real boots on the ground, hearing from the consumers or the stakeholders that are making decisions, and really turning on the listening piece to that. And then also for myself, it comes down to beta testing. If you get a bunch of data that tells you to move in one way, we have to be careful to overgeneralize. When we talk about, a number of the centers in our communities have different localities, different ways of life that are not always something as easy to say, okay, somebody living in the Jersey Shore is the same as somebody living in Miami down in Florida. But a data point or a data set might tell you maybe the age demographic is the same, maybe they're moving in this type of way, but it doesn't take all of the environment that they're living in into consideration, which is, again, one of the easy basics of marketing. But I feel we've lost that along the way as we have things like tools that are coming in, and it is easier to sit behind a screen than to actually have those real communication or the real talks face to face with consumers.
Yeah. So you just talked about, a couple of specific steps I think that marketers can take to sort of better develop this understanding, creating that feedback loop with sales, who's sort of like front and center, front lines with the customer, ideally, all of the time. And also taking those data points and sort of gut checking, validating, asking the follow-up questions for like, should we really be generalizing and looking at this as a segment across the board, or is this different by location, by demographic, et cetera, et cetera? Are there any other, specific steps that you think, especially in healthcare, that marketers can take to develop that better understanding of the people behind their products and the communities that they're serving, to sort of keep it all in check?
I think for me, it goes back to the stewardship and the empathy, and the compassion. The main reason for what I do is to always know that there's somebody on the other side. Healthcare is incredibly hard to navigate, and having my own experience with my father, being in a couple of our centers, it's very different to sit on the family side as opposed to just, the side that's either marketing or sales. And once it becomes personal to you, it's easier to envision and relate to somebody else's shoes that you're fitting into. The services that we do provide is in the services of human care and life care, quality of life, and making sure that we are constantly saying what is the value that we are presenting to the patient, to the family, to the residents, even if they're only seeking information to better understand a diagnosis, because they're in a sea of information and they just don't know where to get it.
And this is so important. And I know you just, brought up your own personal story. And, when we spoke, I was talking about my dad, who, we recently, and I have a lot of friends and people of, sort of like my generation whose parents are, transitioning into senior living. And it is an extremely difficult, gut wrenching process to go through personally as a child, and supporting your parent, through that shift. There can be a lot of other things going on. And I found myself so frustrated by the difficulty and challenges of finding like accurate information online. Who do I trust? Which living facilities should I be looking at? What resources are available to me? You, I think, and your team have made a concerted effort to make information as helpful and sort of open and accessible as possible. Um, Even to the point, we talked about of like with the senior living facilities specifically, not gating like pricing information, which seems like a small thing, but is so frustrating when you're going from site to site to site, filling out a form just to get some information about the living facility, and then having to wait and getting a barrage of phone calls that are ultimately unhelpful. So can you talk a little bit about like how why you made that commitment and how you foster that specifically with the content creation philosophy across the team? How do you look at that?
Absolutely. I think collaboration is key here at Marquee. And I would be remiss to say that that was singly my idea. That actually was our VP of business development and sales and marketing for the senior living that collaborated with me. And he definitely pushed that to sit there and say, if we're looking, because again, that being the sales side, if we're looking to spearhead that transparency, we need to do something bold. And so being receptive to that, and having that be able to be placed onto our websites was huge. On top of that, having the ability to be a good listener at the organization is something that I think also sets us apart. One of the pieces of content that's coming to mind is, as you were speaking about, your experience in looking at the different competitors and things of that nature. We had a sales individual say that somebody was continuing to have, or that the question was always asked, how do I downsize? How do I downsize from a big home to an apartment? Something again that when you put yourself into a consumer's perspective, it seems so simple because we live this every day. But that knowledge that's in between our two ears here, is very hard to get into the consumer mindset that something so simple, it really helps them. So we wrote an article on, downsizing, what to keep, what to throw away, what to donate. And that has been one of our best performing blogs just because it is a useful tool and it is a resource that families don't. And again, it's not gated. It's not, give us your email address and you get this. It's there. It's live content. And we have plenty of blogs that we are still continuing. Our goal is pushing out 2 brand new blogs per week, which is a pretty lofty blog writing kind of composure to get it even clinically reviewed by our chief marketing officer with a separate partnership that we have, who is also a geriatrician. Again, there's just so many hands in the digital side of things. It oftentimes feels like I'm air traffic control, is a good way to describe my desk, but all the people that I interact with on the senior leadership team to the leadership teams within the communities certainly have a hand in this.
So what sort of challenges do you think have gotten in the way of or sort of obscured the role of kind of this service oriented brand marketing, I want to say like mindset or approach? What do you think is like getting lost there and mistakes that you see marketers making? And how are you counteracting that and fostering this sense of stewardship on your team successfully?
I believe there's two big things standing out in mind. Um, I think there's a part of digital marketers out there that we love the new, right? We're constantly looking for what's the new tool, what's the new this, what's the new. However, we could stay so busy in the new that we never perfect the old and the basics. And so, with that being said, one of the biggest challenges I think is ourselves. You go as a digital marketer online and you start looking at LinkedIn and you're constantly distracted by all the things that can take you off pace. Oh, there's a new tool for a data set. There's a new advertising tool. Wait a minute, there's a new white paper coming out. There's another podcast coming out. Wait, your fear of missing out is what I'm trying to say. And if you don't take the time to look at what it is that you're currently trying to do and keeping it as simple as whether it's a designated account, what is the goal for that particular client? What is that goal for that particular person or that service? And keeping it as humanistic and as empathetic as possible. And the easiest way for myself to ground me, I do meditate quite often in my personal life, but it's remembering my own why and never forgetting where I came from. I never came from a very, very wealthy background. I came from a literally had to claw myself up. I am a second generation, first like master's degree in the family, and only woman in the family. So I mean, I feel like keeping ourselves humble and keeping ourselves with the humility of why are we doing what we're doing instead of just getting busy in the tasks, getting busy in the next best thing. And also it's hard because a lot of people have lives to pay for. But at the end of the day, if you aren't tied to a greater purpose in your marketing that sort of shows your brand and your name is your brand first and foremost, I think we get into murky waters.
Totally. And, it's so easy, especially with so many remote teams, highly distributed teams now, with more of a hybrid workforce than we've ever seen before, to kind of s- sit up and keep in mind, get in touch with your team, get in touch with yourself, and not just like stay busy, busy, busy behind the computer. So, I'm curious about your advice, especially to marketing leaders who are so caught up in the noise and the day-to-day tasks. You just mentioned one thing, your own personal, mindfulness and sort of meditation practice is helpful to you. But people who fear, having the time to be able to devote to thinking in a more sort of human way about the work, and who may be, I know you have a very supportive community and team at Marquee, but at other brands potentially getting pushback for, hey, I need this on my desk tomorrow. Why is it important that you're focusing on story and, getting the answer to these questions? Like, how do you advise folks to kind of respond to potential pushback and even their own doubts about having the time to really be a human to human marketer?
Yeah, I mean, it comes to finding your voice. If this was in my early 20s, I definitely was a much more timid marketer, much more, follow the path of the group more than be my own Finding Nemo self off on the sea. Um, However, I think it really is finding your voice and what you stand for, and making sure that you're heard, even if it is scary. I mean, it is not always the easiest conversation to say, I disagree or I politely disagree. But it's needed. When you're talking a leader isn't there to say yes always. A leader is there to do the right thing. And so making sure that you're doing the right thing, whatever that right thing stands for yourself, that's what allows me to sort of put my head to bed in a peaceful way. Because I try to always sit there and make sure, is it the right thing? And not only is it the right thing, but do you want things done right? Two different things there, right? There's doing the right thing, and then is it getting done right? Or are you just speeding through the project and saying, I tasked it, I checked it off the box, and I moved it along? But the good marketers, the experienced marketers, know, no, I kind of skipped, the B, C, and D step. I went from A to F, and I just pushed it along. So I think also there comes a point where we have to also educate people on and whether it's team members, whether it's outside influencers, to say, in your mind you might think this takes a day. However, let me show you the steps of how long this does take to do it the possibly or what is advised as the best way. And you still let the customer decide, but now it sort of takes that off of you. It takes that off of you that you've done the education. This is the right way. This is the get it done tomorrow way. Which would you like?
I love it. Yeah, the right way versus the get it done tomorrow way. Keep that in check. Don't just check the boxes. Check in with yourself. So, looking ahead, I mean, do you think, are you seeing more marketers and sort of peers embrace this kind of attitude? Do you feel like almost since COVID, we have gotten more in touch with this, and marketers are standing up to focus more on, what I think of as kind of like your point about quality over necessarily, quantity and just like churning out content? Or do you think it's going to become more rare and almost like a differentiator?
I feel like we're at a crossroad. And not to give you a neutral answer, but I do feel we're at a crossroad depending on the different generational gaps of marketers. there certainly is, as the shift has gone from traditional marketing into digital marketing. You have a bunch of people who have years and wisdom of what that traditional marketing, radio, print, advertising, and then you have this new school of young leaders, these digital natives, that everything I was just reading a stat the other day, and my daughter, who's 10 years old, my youngest daughter, would fall into this category. She has never known life to be without a digital device. So you have these new marketers coming in that are so used to custom, personalized, tailor content that the only way you're going to hit the digital native is to specifically speak to a point for them, possibly even by first name basis. Where then you have the other generation that was used to the billboard advertising that says, yeah, that's a good enough kind of approach. I'll take it. I trust it. It's a brand. It's a reputed company, and I'll go for it. So I think we're at a crossroads of, as this younger generation comes in, the demand of personalization, the demand of empathy and compassion, and the human to human marketer is really going to be the game changer for brands that are looking to have longevity, going into the future and beyond. It's not going to be easily attained, but I think that that's what's going to help the brand stand out.
Yeah. And to throw a curveball here for a second, are there any specific, like, sort of technology or digital trends that you're excited about right now that are sort of blending these two things? You mentioned personalization and tailoring being so important, which is definitely true. Any other, specific kind of technologies or trends that you're looking forward to embracing or that you guys are looking at? I know you're big on like interactive experiences and new types of digital experiences too, but anything you're looking at for the future at Marquee?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be remiss not to say AI coming into play. I've been keeping myself very educated in the AI. I am being very cautious, because obviously, with a lot of good, there could come a lot of bad with that, and it all depends on the person handling the AI. So, I mean, really, how do we shape automation? How do we shape efficiency? How do we shape scale? But again, not lose that dynamic of humanness or oneness of all of us, to better provide services, or better send the message out to consumers. So I think there is the trend for me, at least, is how do you stay continued tie of morality and ethics as you're in a sea of evolving technology tools. Not easy, not easy at all. But I think making sure that we continue to, back to what I said earlier, remembering your why, remembering whatever it is that put you in the seat that you're in today as marketers, and holding on to that is really going to be necessary moving into the future.
Yeah, I love that you made that point because I think especially marketing, this is sort of the frontier and the forefront of where generative AI is having an impact on business, especially related to content creation. It's sort of one of those lower hanging fruit kind of applications, but in healthcare in particular, the importance of accuracy, of trust, of rigor, and even you were talking about those checks every piece of content kind of goes through for quality and accuracy is really critical to maintaining the trust and the responsibility, to your audience, to put the right information out there. So I feel like it's such an important almost mandate of the senior marketing leader today is to drive that vision of what the integration of this technology is going to look like. And that's really exciting. A little that, with great responsibility or great power comes great responsibility, I should say. But yeah, it's an exciting thing. So, I wanted to ask, you've dropped a lot of great wisdom here today. I know you're passionate about sort of like teaching and passing on, wisdom to up and coming marketers too. So if you could, what is a piece of advice that you wish you had gotten or you would give to your younger self, that you think might resonate with a marketer who's starting out now and wants to be in your position someday?
Never be scared to ask why somebody's asking you something. I feel a lot of young marketers are sometimes intimidated, and I'm speaking for myself personally. I definitely was a professional people pleaser, is what I'd like to call myself, in my early 20s, because I was trying to climb the ladder and trying to understand what those, senior leaders, this is prior organizations, what they had envisioned and trying to fit the mold. And sometimes being scared to find your own voice, or to speak your own mind in that type of setting is still a very real thing, I think, to young leaders today. And it almost goes back to elementary school, being the kid with the hand up first in the classroom, right? Like it still is a very intimidating, like, oh, I'm supposed to know this, or oh, I graduated college and what are they going to think? I think it really comes back to just don't be scared to ask questions so that you get to understand what you need to know up front to tackle a project. Or if in some cases there has been industries and jobs that I've had to decline because it just did not fit what I was trying to say for myself as my own personal brand.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable with us here today. Every time I talk to you, I feel more inspired for the rest of the day. So I know our listeners are going to get a lot out of this conversation. If I can, I would love to keep you on for just a second and go through some speed round questions with you. So you haven't had a preview here, but these are just, really short, quick questions. Just give me the answer that's like the first thing that comes to mind when you hear this. Is that cool?
Okay, sounds good. I'm ready.
All right. So as a marketer, what keeps you up at night?
I think just trust of other marketers.
Is it that it's been difficult for you to, oh, you mean like other brand marketers, potentially like bad
Other
apples out there?
brand marketers and the stuff that I'm being sold daily.
Yes, that resonates.
Yeah.
That resonates. But we know there are people like you out there.
We do.
The watchdogs. What keeps you going?
My family, my two daughters. I have a 17-year-old daughter and I have an 11-year-old daughter.
What marketing term do you love?
Clear as kind. I had to steal that from Brene Brown.
Love that. Yes, I love Brene Brown too. What marketing term do you hate or intensely dislike at this point in time?
Always be closing.
ABC. I had a job early in my career, tangential to sales, where it was boiler room, ABC, ABC. Yeah, so I share that sentiment. What emoji do you think best describes the current state of marketing?
Oh, that's a fun one. I would actually put side smirk emoji.
I haven't heard that. Can you elaborate? Why side smirk?
Yeah, side smirk is like the little like emoji. I might have to send this to you after, but it's like the little like slanted smile emoji, almost like when you say something sly. I think there's a lot of marketers that are trying to keep their goodies all to themselves, and they're saying like, "Let's see what we're coming up with." I think there's a lot of information storing out there.
Interesting. I love it. And your take on the age-old debate, quality or quantity?
Quality, hands down.
100%. We are aligned. Thank you so much again, Natalie, for coming on. It was such a pleasure to speak with you again for this period and love to have you back again. Appreciate you spending the time.
Thank you so much, Casey. It's been a great day, great time with you.
Thanks for listening to Content Disrupted, brought to you by Skyward. Stay up to date on the latest ideas and insights in brand building and content marketing by visiting our website at skyward.com. Join us for our next episode, where we'll continue to challenge marketing norms and inspire you with fresh strategies for growing business through brand storytelling. See you there.